We start now with UN and its importance for the world. My point is first, because of questions from Darwis, is it possible to influence such an organization like UN when you have a small network? There are billions of human beings on this planet, and we are just some thousand, so it's a small number. But my point is there is a possibility to influence it. And we did this in the past. For example, when there was the UN Year of Mountains, it was a suggestion from Kyrgyzstan. They wanted tourism and agriculture. And then instead, no, we want to have also the arts, culture, not only tourism and agriculture. And this was possible. There was a resolution of the General Assembly of UNESCO in 2001, and they changed the program. And this was important for the further development. The point for this development was that we found out that you have a sort of dealing with culture since the 19th century, which is an instrumentalization of the arts and culture for a new sort of mass warfare. It's not the past that makes this structure. It is a specific form of societies which came up with this sort of cultures. Take, for example, France. In France, in the 17th century, there was an academy which imported words. France, in 17th century, they imported 10,000 words of tools, and this was an enrichment of France. Then in the 19th century, they tried to exclude words because they wanted to prepare war. But this doesn't have to do anything with the reality of English, French, and other languages, because all these languages are polyphonia. There are a lot of different words. Take, for example, the European languages. They are influenced by Latin words, Greek words, and what most of the people do not know, there are a lot of words, for example, from Hindi in the European languages. Take, for example, the word shampoo, to wash the hair. Shampoo, this is a Hindi word. And there is a lexicon with thousands of words which are in the European languages. And this book is called Hobson Jobson, and very interesting to study. Also, for example, Arabian words. There is an important book about that, what influenced the European languages. For example, matratze and so on, in the bed, matratze. These are Arabian words, and I will talk about that also during the conference. I'm now active since half a century for culture. I started with poems when I was 15 years old. I brought out my first poem book, and I have now experiences over half a century, also with institutions like UN, UNESCO. I was a former member of the Austrian UNESCO Commission. I'm a member today of the conference of the anti-atomic bomb from UN and a lot of other things. Main point today is to come to a new organization of UN, and it's very important that President Lula from Brazil said that main point for G20 is to reform United Nations. There's a very clear point which he has, and I want to say also some words about G20. G20 was founded to rob money for United States. They had their financial crisis and all the world had to suffer. And to organize that, G20 was founded. Then came a very interesting development, and I'm very glad that Darwis Khudori gave me the possibility to be part of this preparation of the G20 summit in Indonesia. And the Indonesian president changed the G20. G20 is not an idle organization. It's clear. When you take a Bandung movement, there are very clear words about social justice. And General Secretary Guterres said this is nearly similar what Bandung means and what United Nations wants. So this is a step within the change of UN, and I think there are different organizations like the non-aligned movement and other movements who can help. G20 is a platform with different organizations, with different states, and the next step was to involve African Union. This was great that in India, African Union came to G20. G20 is small, but I think there is the possibility to discuss. We had the situation in Indonesia that the NATO states didn't want the discussion. They wanted exclusion. And you have also from Ukraine the situation that they want to destroy UN. They said, no, we exclude these states and other states. But when you exclude the states, then there is no dialogue or polylogue possible anymore. And then you have war. This is very clear. There are some who want the war. For example, in Near East, Netanyahu want to have a war in the whole region. And he wants that because he wants that the US will support him in this war, that he can win the war. But he lost the war still, until now. And also the other nationalists in this world, it is very important that Lula has now this approach that we come to a new cooperation in this world. You have also in the suggestions of the United States, not militarization of the markets, but in the opposite, it is necessary to have a new cooperation. It will not be easy. There are central things to be changed. For example, the currencies. There are those historians who say that someone is making noise there. Please just deactivate your microphones when you are not. So, okay. Uh, you have the possibility now that there will be a change, and what Netanyahu is doing in Israel, this is not only genocide, this is also a way to interfering with U.S. Economic interests, because the alternative suggestion President Biden made in New Delhi cannot be realized with the war of Netanyahu. And we will see how long he is Prime Minister from Israel. But this is not the question, is he Prime Minister or not? The question is we need a political solution, not only for Near East, but also, for example, for Taiwan, Ukraine, and so on. And I see these possibilities that they come up with these different suggestions for a new UN, and that there are strong forces who want that. And in this situation, it is helpful when scientists make a suggestion. So the sense of this World Conference today is to make suggestion in the sense of Bandung, in the sense of the Charter of the United Nations, in the sense of a culture of peace. And we will have the presentation of a lot of different projects. For example, Jura Seufer, the Austrian resistance fighter. For example, the World Project of Mountains as a peace project. I tried to establish this project at the feet of the mountain Elbrus. And this is the highest mountain in Europe with 5,600 meters and more. And very interesting regions with a lot of languages and so on. But the terrorists there just killed people, and it wasn't possible anymore to make a peace project. The whole region, Caucasus region, should have been a region of peace, and this was a step towards wars we have today. So we will talk about this project in the afternoon, and we have this project in over 30 languages, the Iron Age, and this is also to think about languages, about new technologies, about new publics. It's a combination not very well known in European countries, but for example, Peter Horn in South Africa, one of the long-term Insta presidents, was a poet, and his colleague, Nobel Prize winner Khudori, I met in Cape Town in 1995, and we have a lot of such combinations in the world, and I think it is an interesting approach. And we will talk about translations, we will talk about machines, we will talk about a lot of things which are influencing the way we're living today. You have a first resolution, for example, from the UN about digitality. They call it artificial intelligence. This is just funny because this is reproduction. But when you have these large language models, this is a way of reproduction. This has nothing to do with innovation. You cannot step forward to new things. It's just it's an immense material of words, of grammar, and so on. But it won't work to develop new things with that. So you see, we have interesting participants. We have interesting themes here. We will have a new form of distribution of knowledge, and also to get access of this knowledge to the leaders of this world. I was coordinator at the EOS project. This was culture for governments, and this was an old form of academic how to do it. We will try now new forms, and thank you all very much for your contributions. But first, I want to ask Darwis to speak to us. I appreciate very much what he is doing, his conferences, his publication. And Indonesia, this was a real important G20 summit. Please, Darwis, speak to us.
Thank you very much, Herbert. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I would like to congratulate to your initiative, which I found important, and it is in line with what I have been doing also since long time, especially since 2005, when we, academic civil society movement, organized for the first time the commemoration of 50th anniversary of the Bandung Conference. Because before 2005, the commemoration of Bandung Conference was always organized by states. But since 2005, we academics, scholars, civil society movement in diverse countries of the world commemorate the 50th anniversary of Bandung Conference. And starting from that time, I built networks of scholars, academic, civil society, activists of social and solidarity movement to have a meeting, regular meeting every 5 years in Indonesia for commemorating Bandung Conference, and then every year small meeting or smaller meeting, sometimes big, for the commemoration. And next year, 2025, we will commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Bandung Conference. So there is already a series of conferences planned from 2004 until 2024 until 2025. So the first will be in Delhi, 24th of April, for annual Bandung Day Conference organized by Professor Mohanty here present. And then I will organize in Indonesia at the end of May with a team of Papua and Africa. So with Papua and Africa to build the world anew. The theme of the general themes of our commemoration will be to build the world anew, which was the title of the speech of President Sukarno in UN General Assembly 1960, to build the world anew. As he said, we will not defend this world, but we wish to build the world anew. This is the word from President Sukarno. So the theme, general themes of the conference in diverse countries of the world will be related to build the world anew. So Professor Mohanty, for example, will speak about Palestine and to build the world anew. And we in Indonesia, with Africa, with our colleague Isaac Bazier, we will speak about with Papua and Africa to build the world anew. And then in Brazil, at the beginning of September, will be the new commemoration of the new international information order organized by our colleague Beatriz Bicio from Federal University of Rio de Janeiro on the journalism and to build the world anew. And in December, we will organize in Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, on Africa, Asia, and the world to build the world anew. And then next February, March 2025, I organize our annual international and interdisciplinary conference dedicated to the rise of Asia in global history and perspective, with the theme of 70 years after Bandung, what assessment and what projects to build the world anew, etc., etc. And the summit will be in Indonesia toward the end of October, beginning of November 2025, like what we have done for Bandung, Belgrade, Havana conference in 2022, in conjunction with the G20 summit, where Herbert Arlt participated. So that is just very short introduction of our movement. And now, Herbert, you suggested me to speak 20 minutes. I doubt, maybe I will speak less. I have 15 points to say, so I don't know if I can say 1.1 minutes. Okay. First point, we are in turbulence of global changes. We are in the turbulence of global changes in which the wars in Ukraine and in Palestine are the most spectacular manifestations. And we do not know where are these changes going, whether they go to the best or to the worst of the world. This raises questions to me personally as a scholar, as well as a simple human being. What should I do? So I come to the second point. What should I do? There are many ways to identify what changes, what kind of changes now, so that we can decide what should we do. The third point, so I would like to quote, I prefer to identify the changes in the interesting word of Kishore Mahbubani, who is professor of political science and international relations in National University of Singapore and was ambassador of Singapore at the UN. In his book, The Hemisphere of Asia, and he said it is the irresistible shift of global power to the East. So this is the, he summarized very well what changes now, the irresistible shift of global power to the East. So my fourth point, that the rise of Asia has been widely recognized by academic world. I just quote this word from the giant reference of word system theory, Immanuel Wallerstein. But other works, academic works, converge toward this statement, like the work of Terutomo Ozawa, The Rise of Asia, the Flying G's theory of tandem growth and regional agglomeration. Frank Tipton, The Rise of Asia, Economic, Society, and Politics in Contemporary Asia. Mahbubani Kishore, The New Asian Hemisphere, The Irresistible Shift of Global Power to the East. Deepak Nayar, Asian Transformation, an inquiry into the development of nations and resurgent Asia, diversity in development. Parag Khanna, the future is Asian, commerce, conflict, and culture in the 21st century. Subhan Rahman, the political economy of Asian century, under the direction of Professor Mohanty, etc., etc. I can develop this, especially I would like to quote the work of Professor Deepak Nayar from India, who was the, let's say, he departed from the most famous book on Asia in 1970s or 1960s and 70s, which was Gunnar Myrdal, was Swedish economist, Nobel Prize of Economy, who wrote in 1960s Asian drama, which is very pessimistic about the future of Asia, because in 1970, Asia is the poorest continent in the world, with wars, famines, diseases. Asia was very dark in 1970s. But Professor Deepak Nayar showed in very huge book, 2 books, Asian Transformation and Inquiry into the Development of Nation, and Resurgent Asia, Diversity and Development, which is written by a teamwork making research all over Asia, and showed in very convincing that Asia was rising, especially from 1970. And while in 1970, the GDP of Asia is only 3% of the world, in 2016, it is 30% of the GDP of the world. And now it's rising, continues rising. And according to all the forecast about economy, so no, I pass. This is Deepak Nayar. Now I would like to quote Parag Khanna about the future is Asian, which is very interesting book. It said that the Asia, integration of Asia, Asian countries move toward a kind of system. But the system or Asian system will not be similar to European system. There will be no Asian Union. There will no central bank. There will no military alliances. The Asian, they live peacefully during thousands of years without any alliances or bloc. They just live peacefully each other. And for the Asian people, respect each other is enough, not necessary to conquer others. This is the word of Parakhana. Now, 7 point, economic forecast until 2050, converging. The 10 top global economic size, according to power water consultants. For example, 2050 will be from China, the first, India, second, USA, the third, India, four, and then followed by Brazil, Russia, Mexico, Japan, Germany, UK. According to the economists, will be China, USA, India, Indonesia, Japan, Germany, Brazil, Mexico, UK, France. According to the World Economic Forum, China, India, USA, Indonesia, Brazil, Russia, Mexico, Japan, Germany, UK. According to OECD, will be China, India, USA, India, Japan, Turkey, Germany, Brazil, UK, Mexico. My 8th point. So you see the composition of this 10 top economic size in the world. We can divide into G7 and E7. G7 is US, UK, France, Germany, Japan, Canada, and Italy. E7, emerging, E from the word emerging. Emerging 7, China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, Russia, Mexico, and Turkey. So you see here 2 groups, G7 and E7. Our question is, do they share the same dream for the future? Do they share the same dream for the future? This indicates that despite the discourses of multipolarity, there is still the primacy of bipolarity between these 2 groups. And I was, my 9th point is that it is not they don't share the same dream, because the G7 represent what President Sukarno in 1960s already said, all default, all established forces, while the new emerging E7 is what he said, he called new emerging forces or NEFOs. And they will not share, they do not share the same dream for the future. So can we identify what kind of dream they have? So my 11th point, I will borrow. I like very much the identification made by Professor Mohanty here, what he called global rebalancing and global restructuring. Global rebalancing, in brief, that there will be balance in economic powers, but there's no change in architecture of politics, economics of the world. So they're just a balance, while the political power, economic, political power, global power still in the hand of all default or E7. The global restructuring is global restructure, not only economic size, but also the management of the world or global governance. So this is the dream of the NEFOs, or new emerging forces, toward the change of global structure. Maybe Professor Mohanty will develop later. So my 13th point is a question. Will they move peacefully, these two groups, in the future? Will they fight violently or compete peacefully? If we look at the mass destructive weapons in the world, the nuclear powers, according to Arms Control Association, you have in G7 4 nuclear powers: USA, UK, France, Israel. While in E7, you have 5 nuclear powers: China, India, Russia, Pakistan, North Korea. In terms of number of warheads, nuclear, the G7 has 7,095 nuclear warheads, while E7, they have 7,425 nuclear warheads. So in terms of nuclear power, E7 is superior to G7. So we don't know if there will be wars. My hope and my assumption is that there will be no war, because the West is not sure that they will win. Now I come to my 14th statement, which is, I quote from the statement of Professor Rehman Sobhan in the book directed by Professor Mohanty. He said, it was in 2015, he said, this transformation in the world economic order will not be painless, either for the East or for the West. Indeed, the transition has the potential for causing much grief to the world, as no established order is likely to cede its hegemony without challenge. The significant point of departure during this phase of transitions lies in the fact that the receding economic power of the West, dominated by the US, remains and is likely to remain in the immediate future the dominant military power in the world. This erosion of the economic power of the West, while retaining military dominance with the US and its North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, allies, does not bode well for an easy transition for the global order. How far the dominant West will go to preserve their hegemony of their economic order remains critical in determining whether the Asian century will evolve peacefully or through a process of turmoil. So this is still a question. So I come to my last point. What should I do as scholar, activist of social and solidarity movement, as a humble, simple human being? So I define my duty in 4 points. The first point, to form or to participate in the formation of united forces of intellectuals, scholars, activists of social and solidarity movement for a shared global future based on the Bandung spirit ideals of peace, independence, equality, solidarity, and emancipation. There are initiatives in this sense. I think the initiative of Herbert with INST movement is a part of this formation of united forces of intellectual scholars, activists, and social solidarity movement. And the other movement like Progressive International, and we with Professor Mohanty as well, with the Bandung Spirit communities. This is the first point. My second duty is to accompany the rise of Asia in progressing globally toward a sustainable prosperity in peace, justice, cooperation, diversity, and solidarity, so that the rise of Asia will benefit not only Asia, but also the rest of the world. Third duty, not to leave anybody left behind, in line with the Bandung spirit ideal of solidarity, translated into empowerment of the victims of global injustice, including Africa in general, certain countries like Cuba and Palestine. My fourth duty is to go beyond NATO. NATO, I don't mean North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO in Indonesian joke means no action, talking only. So, meaning translating our thought into actions, not action, go beyond no action, talking only. Go beyond NATO, translating our thought into action. It is in this respect that we founded AFRASI, African, Asian, and International Studies Institute in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, as a training center for the youth of Africa and of other parts of the world in the perspective of Bandung spirit ideals. So I finished with my 15th statement. I don't know if I passed 15 minutes or maybe 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this important contribution. I would suggest, as you referred several times to Mano, that we take Mano's speech now and discuss then both contributions. Mano, please.
Thank you very much, Herbert. Thank you. This is a kind of talking which is also a form of action, Darwis. When we hear each other talk about peace, justice in the world, this is also part of action. But also we follow it up with organization and publication and demonstration and many solidarity initiatives. Thank you very much. I think I will focus on just one issue, which also includes global restructuring, but that issue is the new threat to peace. What is this new threat to peace? Because I think this community, Herbert's as well as, I think all of us are part of several movements and scholarly initiatives. I myself consider myself as not only a teacher, but also a peace and human rights activist or a member of a movement or several movements. Okay, what is the new threat to peace? Because we are really confronted by not only these two very dangerous wars, Israeli aggression on Palestine, the genocide in Gaza, now escalating into a larger war, and the Ukraine war, and many smaller conflicts all over the world. The new, that is just one expression of the magnitude of the threats to peace. I think there are three clear threats to peace today, and these are the setback that the world has suffered after COVID. See, COVID shook up the ongoing process in the world. We thought that the developed countries, who were promoting neoliberal agenda of techno-capitalist development strategy, they had learned some lesson. But very quickly after COVID, they were back in the same business. And that is why, the first threat to peace that I see, and that is the biggest challenge today, is the new aggression, both in military terms as well as technology and economic terms, that the Western neoliberal forces have launched throughout the world. And wherever there are challenges, those challenges are being met with a new tempo of aggression. So that is the new threat to peace. And incidentally, in Asia, the elites, particularly of India and China, they're practicing the same techno-capitalist development model, which in the West they were they had propounded, and they are promoting all over the world. So I would like to see Asia, Africa, and Latin America and alternative forces like Herbert and many peace and transformative forces present here. They should relate our crisis to the new aggressive posture of techno-managerial capitalist authoritarian forces from the West. So that setback I see during the last 2 or 3 years, particularly during the last 2 years. Our hope that COVID will lead to a new globalism of alternative politics, alternative economy, and global restructuring will be accentuated. In my view, that has suffered a setback. This is one. The second threat is that inequalities are being ignored, and we are back to growth-centric economic strategy. Even though inequalities are being visible everywhere, and even in the World Economic Forum, the Oxfam presented the World Inequality Report. The Thomas Piketty Inequality Lab, it's a global inequality index which is showing all kinds of inequalities, regional inequalities, inequalities among countries, among classes and how the wealthy in every country are accumulating wealth. And what's still, wealth and power and racial and religious minorities becoming, and sometimes religious majorities in some cases, like in India, uh, all this is converging. So inequality has been pushed to the background, and growth, economic growth, has come to the top. And that is why we are only thinking of, India becoming number 3, China is already number 2, and it will become number 1 after 2035 or 2040, and US will become number 2, then India will become number 2. This is all growth. The GDP preoccupation of the economists, of the neoliberal economists, which colonialism and neocolonialism had promoted. So this is the second threat. And I'm afraid the rulers of India and China, the corporate elite and the political elite, irrespective of the leading political parties, by the way, they all they are united on this. We are having an election today, so it is all about growth. Only lip service to inequality by the opposition parties. Okay, so this is the second threat. So, second threat to peace is inequality, therefore violence. And so the third is the violence of nature, violence on the planet, violence, the climate crisis. I think everybody is aware of that. I will not elaborate. So these are the three, in fact, 3 big threats. And the wars which we witness today are manifestations of these 3 threats. Because the first threat is really about threat to the idea of the self. Because global restructuring, for example, is based on the respect for the UN Charter, where all communities, all nations, all cultures have a sense of equality. All nations are equal, you see. And so that sense of equality is under attack. So, so the violence on the self, violence on nature, and violence on culture. Those are the 3. In fact, violence on culture is violence on the truth discourse. And that is what I want to speak for the next 2-3 minutes. One thing which I immensely appreciate in this group, in our Bandung Spirit discussions and similar discourses, is the new discourse, new terms of discourse, the new language of discourse. And Herbert's focus on culture and multilinguality is absolutely great. For example, we talk about omnilateral, not just multilateral. So from unilateral to bilateral to multilateral, we are talking about omnilateral. You see, that's a very important concept. And UN forums try to do that, but unfortunately, the Security Council structure introduced the inequality of nations with veto power, and then that is why the reference to power shift from west to east, this irresistible shift. By the way, I'm not excited about this because our rulers of India and China, they just want to have a new global rebalancing. They will take the chairs vacated by or in the company of the US and UK or Germany, not Germany yet, but I mean, potentially, yes. So the big powers, you see, I want omnilateral, cooperative global order. That is what will be restructuring of power relations so that the power and status of every nation, every linguistic group, every religion, every cultural entity would be equal. Therefore, the new discourse has to be an egalitarian discourse, a democratic discourse, a truth discourse. This is why it has to be a satyagraha discourse. You know, Gandhi promoted the concept of satyagraha not only in the sense of non-violent protest against injustice and against imperialist oppression. It is pursuit of truth in manifold ways. It's not about just passive resistance to oppression. No, it is pursuit of truth. Therefore, self-determination of Palestine, self-determination of all nations is a statement of truth, because imperialism, colonial subjugation is a falsity of history and values. It is based on false premises that some people are more civilized than others, therefore they have a right to rule over others. So that false premise is challenged by a true truth premise, which is that all nations, all religions, all linguistic groups, all cultural groups are equal and they should have the right to self-determination. You see? So that is truth discourse. But unfortunately, the techno-capitalist managerial, and now you can add authoritarian order that West is promoting, does not permit truth discourse. It has a hierarchy of knowledge systems and they decide, and that is being programmed into the new AI. Indeed, it is reproduction, but reproduction of these questionable premises. You see, artificial intelligence will reproduce and multiply false premises, hierarchical premises, as evident truth premises. So the attack on truth is the most important threat, together with the threat of self, because the attack on self or selfhood, which is the attack that imperialism launched 2 centuries ago in a virulent way, and now neoliberalism and Western techno-capitalist authoritarianism is imposing on us. That has to be recognized and fought against. I will make one suggestion about global restructuring and conclude my statement. And that suggestion is about what I call global Swaraj. Swaraj means self-rule, self-determination, self-realization. Swa means self. And this is a very important concept of self. Self is not the obsessive, exclusivist self, which imperialism arrogated to itself. And now neoliberalism is arrogating to itself, to the Western developed capitalist as the self, and the others are other. So it is not the self and the other framework. It is a framework of self and self. To see the world in terms of self and self, one entity, one nation, looking at other nations as selves. So we want to restructure the world to enable every self to be empowered, to exercise power as equals. So restructuring of selfhood realization. This is why, you know, when we talk about future of Palestine, we take it as a very serious unfinished agenda of our anti-colonial struggle. And this was on the top of the Bandung agenda even in 1955. And today it has to be restored on the top of the anti-imperialist, anti-colonial agenda in the age of self. In fact, in my view, 21st century, despite the new hegemonism that West, through its technological military hegemony, is seeking to impose on the rest of the world, and then the competing powers are trying to become more like the West to oppose the West, similar technological military power to oppose the West. That is, you see, that may be a temporary opposition. That may be a way to stop the West in Ukraine, for example. But that is not the solution. The solution is to transform this power structure altogether. And India, China, Brazil, the E7, to be really promoting an omnilateral restructuring of the global order, a UN where the General Assembly becomes the important, not the Security Council. Unless we abolish the unequal power structure in the Security Council, UN reforms is impossible. Okay, so global Swaraj means Swaraj. Raj is rule or self-rule, so self-determination. So how do you achieve that? It is achieving self-determination at various levels, right down to the grassroots level. And therefore, the new international economic order agenda has to be revived. I'm so glad in Havana at the end of this month, there is going to be this 50th anniversary celebration, which Darwis and Bruno will attend on behalf of the Bandung Network. And there will be many of our friends attending that. So global Swaraj, global order of self-determination has to be promoted as the preliminary, as the essential condition for peace. During the Ukraine war and now during the Palestine crisis now, the Israeli aggression on Palestine to such an extent that today even the two-state solution, many people find difficult to conceptualize because Israel has occupied through its settlement so much of Palestine. Unless the West forces Israel to withdraw completely from those settlement areas, you can't have a Palestine even conceptually in terms of territory and the concept converging. That is why self-determination is the agenda. But self-determination in economy, culture, politics, through, in all these layers, we have to ask for self-determination. And that is why for global Swaraj, it is not the exclusive self, it is not the obsessive self, it is what I call the creative self. Creative self is the Ubuntu self, the interdependent self, the mutual self, which sees others as selves, and the exploitative relations among entities have to be attacked, transformed, and replaced by mutual, interdependent, and egalitarian relations. Therefore, let us walk towards global Swaraj. And I think I have been talking in the past in some of the Bandung forums on Swaraj, Ubuntu, Bien Vivir. In fact, that is the framework which global Swaraj encompasses. The Ubuntu framework as well as the Bien Vivir, the good living among people, among humans and natures. Therefore, friends, if we want this setback to be upset, the post-COVID setback, the revival of techno-capitalist military power of the West, which you see both in Ukraine as well as Palestine and globally, and the new imperial vigor with which AI is being pushed by the West in a particularly aggressive manner, not allowing digital democracy to be really thought about. You see, we don't have time. We are not getting time to have a Soros model of the digital democracy, a global Soros model of digital democracy and digital economy, digital society, and so on. We are being imposed by the Elon Musks of the world with the help of both Trump, Biden, Modi, Xi Jinping, everybody. So global Swaraj is the Bandung spirit ideal, the anti-colonial struggles of all the Asia, Africa, Latin American countries, vision of the future. And therefore, I think the culture of peace that Herbert is pioneering as a global movement should be rooted in this pursuit of global Swaraj. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A great contribution. Barbara wants to say something. Barbara? Barbara?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yep.
I would say that it is very complicated to make solutions between two countries. It is very complicated for an Austrian to make the railway going from Italy to Austria, for example, and it is all a long way to do together what is good for the for working together and make the world better. So it is a bit more complicated than only talk about, yes, in practice. So, but it is good to hear you, and I'm happy to take part in this discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other contributions to this two important speeches? Yes, Simo, please.
I think
I
you are.
hope you are hearing. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes,
Are you?
yes.
No, yeah.
Thank you very much. I've been very impressed by the two contributions, and I have realized exactly why Africa is still behind, because we acknowledged that in Asia, especially, but in Indonesia and especially in India, there are very in-depth reflection on geopolitics, on how the world should be structured or restructured. In fact, I miss that in-depth reflection in Africa nowadays. We have other reflections and we have other movements. But anyway, let I just bring some observation about what has been said. First of all, the dream of making the world anew, I mean the Bandung dream, is still alive and is still necessary, because the evolution of the world since
the 50s, when all these ideas had been developed, haven't solved any of the problem which were addressed in Bandung. Surely, many countries, especially in Africa, got their independence, but as you can realize, it was an independence which is caught in a system, world system, which still functioning. You know, it has been just as a little change in the way the world system has been functioning in the colonial time, you know, and the change has been just superficial, and it is the same dynamics which is going on. This dynamics is surely a capitalist one, and I appreciate the way you put it. And with that questioning, what Manoranjan said, question the first perspective which has been stressed, and means question if it is possible in a world capitalistic functioning world to achieve what he called self-expression, self-realization on all fields of the world, economically, politically, and so on. That's a very important issue. What I can say is that the idea of polylogue instead of monologue, of polycentric word instead of monocentric word, of globalized sharing of power, so that the power shouldn't be concentrated only on a place, a continent, let's say in Europe or America. All that are the fundamental ideas or dream of getting the humanity, I will say, over to not to be totally destroyed, because as we could see, the world as it functions today needs power, threatening powers to keep people on a clear, defined path. You know, the future is already designed. You don't have any possibility of expecting another future just in the reproduction of the today. Even the Bandung, or the spirit of Bandung, which has been shown to us and which is aiming at organizing, let's say, a decentric functioning of the world. Even that has to be questioned if it's possible in the today functioning global world, or what should be done in order not to be just NATO, that mean talking only and not doing anything. If it's not just a dream, that's the question I'm asking myself. It's not just a dream. If there is any strategic, if there is any way of getting away from what is existing, if the A7 or the G20 is able to still in the global functioning of today, which is clearly structured by the capitalist economy, if it is possible to dream of any way of escaping confrontation, just relations of rivalry, of trying to take the best part of what is existing in the world. If it's possible, since some are growing, having from 3% growing to 30%, if it's possible to imagine that all countries, all continents could have the same growth without having our world explode, you know, in terms of resources, which will be totally destroyed, and so on and so on. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that I'm really impressed, and I find it very important that we keep on thinking, and we keep the Bandung spirits alive. But we have clearly to ask ourselves in which sort of a world is the world which the colleague has just mentioned possible. Are we in a dream, or have we that possibility of the polycentric, the poly realization of self, as he's dreaming of? What has to be changed in the world today in order to make it possible? Is it really, with the dynamic we are experiencing today, possible to think of such a change? I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think these are very important questions. And my perspective is, first, NATO, this is the finish of the military revolution. You had the military revolution 500 years to exploit the world. But when you look at the war in Ukraine, they do not have the ammunition, they do not have the technology, and they do not have the money to finance this war. When you look at the situation, Palestine, Israel, you have these warriors, but do these warriors have any perspective? No. I think there will be a totally defeat of the warriors. And you have, on the one hand, those who were talking all the time, more troops, more money, and so on. But more troops, more money, more bombs. What was in Vietnam? What was in Afghanistan? What was in Libya? What was in Iraq? They do not have the possibility. For example, Libya, France, after one day, they wouldn't have the ammunition to fight this war, only because USA was involved. They won the war. And for what? It was not their interest. Their economic interest is something else. So when I look at first point, military revolution developing in the world, you have those warriors who want wars, because this is real big money for the weapon industry, for those who are working professional at the securities, at the military, and so on. But this is no perspective for the world. When you look, for example, at Elon Musk, okay, he got some billions, but his economic model isn't working. When you look at digitalization and the finance crisis, the point is the result of involving digitalization into the money market was the reason, because with reproduction you can't get any innovation. And you have now the situation that they're saying, oh, ChatGPT and so on. Yes, but in Austria, I was at different forums For example, Austria Press Agency. This is the biggest organization you have. They say, doesn't work with involving this ChatGPT. Erste, this is a bank, one of the biggest banks here in Central Europe. They say, no, ChatGPT can't even count the numbers together. These are the realities. And one has to understand the very easy principle. The word is not 0 and 1. This is not the word. Who would say word is black and white? This is not true. This is evident. So that's what they want to sell. Their marketing is based on false models. And here I say, this is what we can do as scientists, to tell them these are the facts. The military, you don't have the power anymore to fight these wars. For example, money, currencies. There is no perspective for the petrodollar because the reality of the petroleum is not in the background anymore. When you take the trade between China, Saudi Arabia, and so on, this is no petrodollar anymore. With their sanctions, they destroyed the world economic system. And the currency is the basis of the exchange in the world. When the currency does not beat the petrodollar, what shall they do? Look at that, what they have to pay every year alone, because they have this big money they owe to the world. When this is breaking down, the economic breakdown will come. And I see what Manu says. He said, okay, you have the same system, production system. I call this the Iron Age. This comes up from Latin. This was a weed. And he wrote a poem about the Iron Age, about the violation of nature. Very important what Manus is saying. The violation of the people against the Human Rights Declaration. Human Rights Declaration is a principal article. Every human being has the right for a just world. This is Human Rights Declaration, not that what for decades the NATO did. This was a break with Human Rights Declaration because in the Human Rights Declaration is written, no political misuse is allowed. And this was political misuse. So I think we have some points where we can get a perspective, a common perspective of the people of this world. We state it's difficult, but for the people, I think there is a perspective, and one major point for me is culture, the exchange. And I was very impressed by the theater work of Natalia. And she has a very interesting project about multilinguality and theaters. And I want to ask you to present us some of your thoughts and your project, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Herbert. Hello, colleagues. I'm here today to present you a project called Theater Dictionary. This project looks quite small in front of the global ideas you're discussing here, but every small step that could unite us is important. That's what I think. I hope it is. And that's why I'm here today to share this small step. And thank you very much, Herbert, for this possibility. That's incredible. And it's incredible to hear all the ideas and contributions you sharing here today. That's big honor for me. Thank you very much. So, going to the project. I'm not an expert in linguistics, but I'm a theater director who works abroad a lot. So I conceived the project Theater Dictionary a long time ago when I staged a play in United States for the first time. And when, for the first time as a practicing director, I was confronted with the fact that director's terminology still has no stable translation. Yes, we know that the direction profession is basically young. It was born, as directing was born in 20th century only. And international direction is even younger. Perhaps it emerged only after World War II and at first in the opera and ballet theater. The tradition of inviting foreign directors reached the drama theater even later. But nevertheless, now this practice, staging plays in another language, is very widespread, and no international theatrical dictionary has yet been created. For, I don't know, 60 years, 70 years, that's a lot. And this makes the work complicated, since not only directors, but even translators rarely know specific theater terminology. That is why it seemed to me very important to create such a dictionary. Such a dictionary is not only useful, but also extremely necessary for the international work of theater directors, actors, and critics. Its absence at the moment significantly complicates mutual understanding between representatives of theater school in different countries. Believe me, it is. I will tell you how I plan to create this dictionary. Since its main purpose is practical application, practitioners should create it in the initial stage. That is, theater directors who use the terminology a lot during their work on productions. So the project includes 3 stages. First stage, it is practical, as are the goals of the dictionary. In it, I plan to gather directors from different language groups for 1-week workshop. During this workshop, the directors will exchange their experience in the field of the most used theatrical terms in rehearsal work. This will allow to extract the most popular and necessary concept and terms for translation. At this stage, partner educational organizations such as Hochschule für Schauspielkunst Ems-Busch or the University der Kunst Berlin will be involved. In case the project becomes internationally significant, this could also include non-Berlin partner organizations. Second stage, working with already selected theater terms. At this stage, I plan to involve theater critics and linguists to translate the terms as accurately as possible. The second stage can be done online and only have a short, like 2 days, offline meeting for summarizing and final checking of the terminology. And the final third stage is the publication of the theater dictionary, in which Herbert will be directly involved. That is the publication of the book, the Theater Dictionary, the result of the project. Of course, I would like to translate the theatrical terminology into as many languages as possible. But for now, just for the beginning, based on practical necessity, like, let's say, on most popular international directions, this should be the following languages: English, German, Russian, Bulgarian, Polish, Greek, Italian, French, and Spanish. Total of 9 directors with international experience will be invited to work on the projects in the first phase. 1 native director from each language. For the second stage, in which theater critics and linguists are involved in the project, I hope to find specialists each of whom will be able to combine expertise in several languages. Thanks to innovative methods that Herbert is practicing, the result of this project, the book Theatre Dictionary, will be available to both theatre professionals and the general public, and will surely be in green demand as the first ever book of this sort. So thank you very much. I look forward to your questions and to any interest to this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have an Latin, an expression, and this is pars pro toto. And this means in English, you take a small part, but you can get the existence to the whole, pars pro toto. And for me, I was in 1988 to 1989 in Berlin and teach at the Humboldt University at the GDR. And in this time, I saw 200 theater performances in the GDR. I was in 24 different towns, and I understood the change will come with the theater. The theater was this specific form of a public which didn't exist with TV, with newspapers, and so on. And I think also during the Enlightenment and so on, it was very important to theater. So I think it's a very important project what you're doing. Are there any questions to Natalia? Okay, you had a clear explanation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues.
The next speaker will be Fatima. She was introduced as one who has her international knowledge because she was teaching at a lot of universities in this world, but also was assistant of Edward Said. And Edward Said is someone who plays a big role also within our circles. Please, Fatima, speak to us. The tone.
Fatima, microphone.
Unmute. Okay, great. Okay, greetings to all participants, and thank you very much, Herbert, that you invited me. You suggested that I talk a little bit about my biography. How come that I came to so many places or positions in my life? I think that it's more important to present briefly because we do not have too much time. 2 or 3 of my current projects, but I will just say that in my early 20s, the war happened in the territories of former Yugoslavia. At that point, I taught at the university in Sarajevo and was doing my PhD in Zagreb. And then I was a refugee for a brief time. Then I went to Switzerland and America to finish my dissertation that was dealing with violence, postmodernism, world order, and arts. And from there, it happened that I was invited to several places, to several countries. So I was a postdoc in South Africa. I was a visiting professor in Ankara, in Azerbaijan, at several other European universities. So it just happened that once when I left my native grounds, native lands, I just became a person in transition. That is how I somehow perceive myself. And I will just say that I know Herbert for full 21 years when I was invited for the INST conference in 2003 in Vienna for the first time, and I organized the session with the title The Autobiography of the Other, Powers of Cultural Transferences. And that says indeed about my lifelong project of cultural self-othering. I will briefly present 2 or 3 of my current projects. One is titled Irresponsiveness to Suffering, meaning responsiveness and irresponsiveness to suffering, facing and defacing legitimate hurts. My background in literature, psychoanalysis, and nomadic philosophy lays bare ceaseless interactions of cultural and material realities, hence also interdependent flows of negativity and positivity that are rooted in personal, communal, institutional, or wider domains. That is the hard kernel of the real, around which reflexes of societal traumata circulate and intermingle, not always allowing us the analytic access to their originary sources. As we face today the human faces of suffering through the mass-mediated and digital realities, and the apocalypse now from Gaza is the most persuasively transmitted, our awareness that collective practices of exercising the biological negativity have persisted from time immemorial is raised, as well as our helplessness in confronting such violent and lifeless repetitions. That is why I suggested in my project to discuss irresponsivity and responsivity, and irresponsiveness and responsiveness to human suffering related to different frameworks, societal, communal, state, or institutional. From the implosion of emotions in viewers of the media or unbearable burdens of immediate witnesses, all through the relentless issuing, obeying, and supporting murderous orders by officials and militaries, the legitimacy, so-called, of hurting opens as a question. Although pre-given frameworks and their psychological imprints and molds are often unchanging, it is worth probing comparatively the processes of facing and defacing these collective hurts. That is, to examine how both responsiveness and irresponsiveness in viewing or in incurring enormous human suffering are still on the same platform of cultural biological setups with human limits, hence eventually, even involuntarily, they are prone to triggering hints, traces, or remnants of the opposite reactions. I try to demonstrate in this project that the awareness of rhizomatic interconnectivity that has appeared in different symbols and manifestations throughout human history is today unerasable, that even the most rigid structures of organizing the violent human acting at some point had to revert to its opposites. I will exemplify in this project how the practices of nomadic thought and affirmative affective are possible training remedies that reach across pre-given societal or political frameworks, and how in their relating signs, meanings, values, critique, and acting, these practices of nomadic philosophy and ethics correspond to processes depicted by various streams of semiotics, that is, interpreting signs, from behavioral and psychosemiotics to semioethics. This is one project on which I'm currently working, and it is related to a much larger project that I have been working on actually for several years, and I will briefly present this project that is also related to something that I can link to this conference, to my colleagues from the Global South and my other colleagues. That is something that I call dispersive mediated witnessing. That means not witnessing only firsthand, but being able to detach from one originary group, originary affiliation, originary ethnicities or ethnic group or nationality, and be able to witness for the other side if we keep our critical reflection at certain point. Because witnessing is always described either through language and the subject of language that started from Agamben or Derrida, or at the other side through traumatic experiences that block the language and make the body speak in its own way through blockages of the linguistic. In that project on dispersive mediated witnessing, I try to demonstrate that even in the processes of very painful witnessing, and I can refer now to October 7 that happened in Israel, the attacks on the bordering part of Israel, even in such painful processes of witnessing, it is possible, as we clearly saw in several of the affected and survived witnesses, it is possible to remain critical distance. It is possible to try by their actions and by their words to prevent, actually not prevent, but attempt to influence the will of those who provoked and who led such a scale war that is the war on Gaza. I'm talking, of course, on a very few people, but I will also mention several Israeli colleagues that are clearly against this war, prominent professors at prominent institutions there. So what is happening in Gaza, and that is the apocalypse, as I said, from my perspective, and I'm particularly sensitized to that because I worked with Professor Said and because I was for several months exposed to bombing in Sarajevo, and then I escaped. But for the rest of my career, that means for 30 years, I have been writing about that, about witnessing to human catastrophes in different parts of the world. As I said, I will briefly present the large project that I'm working on for several years, my elaborating of the theory of a post-diasporic sociocultural dispersion. I will just briefly give you a few main points. The study of history and memory, of collective violence, and of mechanisms to move past such legacies in constructive manner is of a huge necessity for the academic community and for artistic, public, and political life more broadly. In many places in the world, new episodes of collective violence are being justified by means of reference to the memory of past ones. The world community desperately needs to find a way past and out of such protracting cycles of violence. This led me to ask how to probe the experiences and roles of war and post-war migrants at individual level and apply it to multi-scale identity wars in post-national settings. I have reconsidered comparatively how the people who migrated as of 1990s from Croatia and from Bosnia and Herzegovina to Central and Western Europe nevertheless managed to memorize creatively the events caused by the destructive dynamic of the communism's aftermath in the ex-Yugoslav wars that we have a reminder of in the events of Ukraine now, a replica, if I can say, in Ukrainian war. In my extensive case study involving the work of 20 widely acclaimed cultural producers of a variety of origins from these two countries, I have aimed to demonstrate that new paths have also opened, alternative to violent ethno-nationalist discourses and imagery, as is reflected in the intellectual and art production. Based on my analysis of the cultural manifestations of individuals who disconnect from their ethnic groups and narratives after collective traumatic events, I have proposed a new model of post-diasporic diffusion, and I'm elaborating a novel theory of sociocultural dispersion beyond existing definitions of mobility. As I define it, such dispersion refers to moving and simultaneous knowledge production. It implies the transforming role of memory and its political materialization, while it also points to hybrid aspects of truth. Thus, theorized dispersion explains the processes of dissociating from group traumas and recalls of collective violence, reworking the critical points of ethnic memorabilities, as well as cultural innovation and possible new integrations. Until now, this is from the word diaspora, which is group or origin related in the entire literature on migration, post-migration, mobility studies, or the social sciences or humanities in general. I tried to provide a theoretical vocabulary that captures both sides of the complexity of the post-diasporic situation in cultural sectors of refugees, exiles, and hosts, and creative interventions in the effects of ethnic rifts, along with the affirmative affective thought and art that bolster European as well as global integrative practices. Equally important is to provide cognitive tools to policymakers on how to recategorize and revalue refugees as culture carriers and not just seeing them as victims, and how to provide tools to refugees on how to creatively dissociate from pain, how to restructure their memory and affect, recontextualize their knowledge, and critically corroborate truth. Utilizing theorizations of nomadism and rhizomatic interconnectivity by Deleuze and Guattari, French philosophers, and particularly of affirmative ethics as elaborated further by Rossi Braidotti, this theory of dispersion that I propose explains the relation of dispersion to memory production in literature, literary theory, and art that respond constructively to displacement and past traumas. For that purpose, dispersion from the 1990s and post-1990s Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina make prime examples, with related complex origins, different models of nation, and presently diverging paths in the European political configurations. We have a similar example now in the war in between Ukrainians and Russians, because Ukraine is obviously obviously has a tendency to belong to and integrate with European Union, while Russia is on the different side. The intellectual practices of these cultural producers that I analyze are built in or around mobility axis, and they involve responses to three sources of 20th century European traumas, that is World War I, World War II, and ex-Yugoslav wars. Such singular acting is understudied, unlike memory's collective aspects and traumatic histories that are recently reflected in the revived value of borders and nations, indeed all over the world, not only in Europe. Let me just say, demonstrating dispersion's capacity to contest dominant structures of simplified ethnic narratives and canons, I propose a globally applicable framework, analyzing individual dispersive moving with new meanings that remembrances take on when they are transferred in new relations in host societies, also advances transcultural memory studies along with witnessing studies, as their post-violent foci are still largely on trauma or commemoration. It explains firsthand how the transgressive, emancipatory, and future-oriented quality of art intervenes in clashing worldviews and concerns with identification and belonging in changing the spaces of habitation. I will conclude just making a point that there is a necessity for wider scholarly refocusing from group to not simply individual, which evokes its often troubled claim to self-identity, but to an individual related to singularity as much as to generality. I will conclude referring to Samuel Weber's, my German and American very prominent colleague, philosopher, to his essay 2021, actually a long study, Singularity, Poetics and Politics, which discusses practices, intellectual, artistic, and literary that, quote, put singularity into place as friction, exposing the self-evidence of established conventions as responses to challenges and problems that they often prefer to obscure and ignore. In light of this, what I term singular dispersive acting or witnessing that intervene into the prevalence of horrific, hurtful, or grieving memory reference can contribute to a socio-cultural change while developing heritage in hybrid ways. That much.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very important contribution, because we are talking about wars, economic processes, and so on. And you talked about that, what is going on with human beings, and how can we get this into knowledge, into public, that there will be a change, not only to say there was a violence, but to say, and which are the results, what can we do? And
Yes.
thank you very
I
much.
tried to point out my project is actually not only academic. As I said, I tried to provide cognitive tools to policymakers on how to change the perception and categorization of refugees, because refugees are always seen as victims. That's the first thing, and not as cultural carriers or possible creators of new domains of knowledge in different countries. And the other thing is that I try to provide tools, concrete tools, to refugees on how to dissociate from enormous pain, from horror, from grieving in new situations, in host societies, and trying to productively transform the memory and create new knowledge. Thank you.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. My point was, look at the climate research. This was progress. This is combination politics and research. We had this in the past with the EOS project. This was for the governments of this world about culture. And this had an enormous influence, but it was also like climate research within the structure of United Nations, within the structure of UNESCO. So I think your idea is, or your project is a very important project, and we should think about how to get this in this international institutions, and that would be helpful for you, I think.
Thank you. Well, any discussion is welcome, and any suggestions from many colleagues who listen to me. Thank you. Any comment that you can email? That's good.
I want to compliment Fatima, really, because I think I have been wondering who invented this term othering. I think this self and other has really become such a dominant paradigm. And I think Fatima's approach really gives us a number of ways to overcome this whole exploitative process, where the ruler, the exploiter, arrogates to itself the notion of the self, and others are called the other, you see.
Othering the self, actually, that is
othering
talking
the self.
about.
Exactly. And particularly this post-diasporic concept of relating humans and seeing history of movements in a different light. I think this is a very powerful creative contribution to reconceptualization of human culture.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there other questions, contributions? Then Yes, Simo?
Just very shortly, I too appreciate the approach you are bringing to that question of traumatic experiences of diasporic life and creative movement. I just wanted to know if you are aware that all this question has already been addressed by other in other paradigms. I just mentioned here the post-colonial approach. It's just a question.
Whatever we say or whatever we write is only a part of relying on the previous knowledge that we may or may don't know of, but we only communicate what we think on the platform of the history of civilization, right? So other ideas are incorporated in us and in our ideas, even if we haven't read all of them, right? Because all of us inhabit the same civilization, at least today, right? So this is my perspective, but of course it has been said in many different ways.
Simo, I just wanted one line. Simo, I think in Africa, there is a lot of fundamental reflections. I have found very rich source of ideas from African intellectual scene. Therefore, your compliment to Asia, I think was, I don't want to take it.
You should take it. I know also what has been done in Africa, and I appreciate the angle from which you tackle this question, which I don't find in Africa. I'm sorry, but I still give you that compliment.
Sorry.
Okay, there was a time. Yes, you're the next, and you have then 20 minutes to speak, but I want to make this comment. When we started with this Innsbruck, there was a very influential book. This was from Samuel P. Huntington. And in this book, he said, Africa has no future. For Africa, we don't have to think they have no influence. Now look at the presence. They are within the G20. They come up with a lot of projects which are important to change the global world. So this was my comment. Please, Diana, your contribution. It's also very important reflections on the development. This is something which is very important for that what we have to develop. Please.
No. Thank you very much. Sorry, no, I've just raised my hand before because I had also one question for Fatima, but I hope we will have enough time afterwards to develop this. I want to thank you for the invitation, and I'm very glad to meet you all here and to know you. My work. So firstly, I would like to introduce myself. I studied at the University of Timisoara in Romania, and now I'm living in Hungary. I do a postdoc on mobility. So I'm very much interested in this argument. I look at mobility beyond I try to look beyond all the narratives of the moment. But I started my research on development and related to development on a conceptual part of how development is created, is thought. And my work was starting from the sub-Saharan Africa, and it's a content analysis, so it's related not to facts actually, but to thoughts on development. So from this point of view, many of the presentations that have been made before. I thank you very much. They were very important for my ideas, also from Darwis and for Mr. Mohanty, and also from Simo and Fatima. Thank you very much for the presentation. I will be brief and will only say that in my view, development is created through the discourses. I try to develop this concept of development through discourses. And because all the narratives that come up from the individual, which is seen by me as a microsystem, is not only the individual itself, but is the individual with the values that he transmits in the society, and is seen conceptually like a microsystem in the world. It is not also related also to the only to the present, but also to the past. I mean, this is an idea coming from the rituals and the way I saw in African analysis that it is the importance of the ancestors and what ancestors create and live as a vernacular memory of the individual in order to be developed in the society. So what was important for me was to look into this aspect related very much to the omnilateralism that you have spoken about, and the fact that society should go and be restructured in a way that hegemonies are not seen. Why? Because there is this idea and this thought that kills me very much. I don't know much about, I don't have a very important contribution in this aspect, but the idea is very important for me. The fact that we see everywhere hegemonies, and we live in a world where we put so much accent on hegemonies, even in if we talk about regional problems in international relations, we also see and talk about this hegemony which lies inside, which lies in our lives. So many critics were trying to deconstruct this hegemony and to say words should be done beyond this. But it is a work in progress because we aren't there to do this. So development and narratives of development were also hegemon, one in confront to the other. I mean, the narrative of development of the West, which was deconstructed because we know we should not even use the term of development, but a new term, evolvement would be better, but maybe social change. In my PhD, for example, I used two ideas of development. One is the resistance and the emancipation as resistance, and the other one is emancipation as social change. But social change is a term that was used for many years, so it's not something new. What we try to do is to innovate, because also in the history of development of African states, for example, we have this narrative of the development of this narrative, sorry, not of development, the narrative of periodization with resistance, reconstruction, recognition, and so on. So from the point of view of knowledge production, my focus is on the deconstruction of these terms that are too Western, and this is not, of course, a new way to see the things, but is a way to try to get the more benefit into the world of today, and getting inspiration from analysts of Sub-Saharan Africa that I have analyzed, and put in contact with the development analysts. Another important subject which I wanted to talk to you about, it's the deconstruction of classifications, is something that already Professor Mohanty have actually reminded us about. And the fact that the agendas of development, which were put between three important aspects: the poverty, the power, and the planning, which in the nowadays paradigms that are in continuous changing, and I have looked on how they changed. I tried to put in connection poverty with just life, power with equality, because power should not be put also into empowerment, because empowerment is the same. It is the risking of transforming, for example, our narratives, our discussions in a power over someone looking from the other side of the coin, or from the other side of with other perspectives. But we want to accept, I think, the different perspectives. And the last one, the planning, is referred to the development as a word not only related to growth, but trying to actually include it. And it's planning is put with decision. This is the idea inspired by the reflections on the development on their own, with own means and own modalities in order to become sustainable. Now, in my work, I tried to look at different points at the resistance and social change, as how do in emerging countries, and especially in the global south, states that were under colonialism, how do they tried to take the most benefit of their colonial memory or the anti-colonial resistance in order to fully arrive to a process of decolonization, that to fully conclude this process of colonization. And there are many ideas that this process is, of course, still in act. But I tried to return to the idea that on the role of the state in this process, and the same idea that is very often and that is very present, of course. And I agree with Professor Mohanty on the fact that there is a large material of self and other in the narratives of Africa, which, by the way, as a consequence and as a conclusion to my work, but it's only an intermediary conclusion, it states that there are still hegemonies that in the narratives that have the power to inspire and to propose the creation of the critical resistance which the world needs. And in this case, trying to come back to our real world and our conversations, I really much thank Herbert because, and also Darwis, because it was my possibility, as a humble contributor in the world of research, to be able to present a perspective that is not very much taken I mean, the perspective of Eastern Europe, I think, is not very present in the global South. And it might be very different from other perspectives coming from my same region, my same area. But it is very important that these meetings are also such multicultural. And on the other side, I wanted to also, in my idea of knowledge production related to the development through discourses, there is the idea of the education and how exactly how exactly have we the power to link this discussion and these conclusions that we take here with policymakers, and this was part of my demand to Fatima, because I think there is a need to start exchanging on the ways the academy should be linked to policymakers in order to adapt some means to the realities of the country and the realities of the academy in that country. So thank you very much.
Fatima, do you want to comment something? Hey, it's mute. Microphone.
Sorry, some technical problem. It's very interesting. I very carefully followed Diana's, Diana, right? Diana's talk, okay? And it's very prolific in ideas. And what I like is that connection that you make of Global South and Eastern Europe, because Global South is, of course, neglected in many aspects, but Eastern Europe is not heard. There were positive and negative aspects of Eastern Europe even during the socialism. And another colleague who was speaking first, I think, mentioned the independence movement, right? And there are some other aspects in which the history of Eastern Europe for the last 100 years could be studied in and approached in a different way. Then we will have different conclusions and not just negatively refusing. That was a socialist past, that was a communist past, there is nothing coming from there, and so on and so on. Always socialism is a reaction to capitalism. Hegemony is a reaction to heterogeneity. Always we have that dynamic of changing or dialectic of changing that we have to look in. And it's a great idea actually to combine the reflection on the Global South with Eastern Europe from your perspective of a Romanian working in or studying in Hungary, right? All ideas that you say, I mean, I really, carefully listen to them and respect them. And I can connect somehow to your way of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. When we started with INST, 1994, we made seminars about internet in Eastern Europe. And this was the introduction of internet to Eastern European colleagues. That's what the background also for the INST network. We have a lot of colleagues from Eastern Europe in our network. Speaking is, for example, András Balogh. He is the head of the Germanists in Hungary. We had last year at the State Theater in Bulgaria a big event for the region, not only Bulgaria, but also involved Hungary and Romania. Romania is very important in different perspectives.
ये वाला चाय कर देते हैं और ये जो ग्रीन टी चाय, हाँ ग्रीन टी.
Okay. And
मिला के.
do you want to say something, Mano?
Sorry. No, unfortunately, I have to leave in another 10 minutes or so for a doctor's appointment, so you'll forgive me. Thank you.
Yes, great that you joined us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, it's very important to have the Eastern European knowledge in INST and also in other networks. Thank you very much that you participated. I hope we will have in the future cooperation. There are a lot of projects we will do, and I will invite you to participate then. You have
Can I please just have one short comment to my presentation and to this fact of perspectives that I also write it here. It is very important. I think in these global networks, the presence of African perspective has to be more, has to be bigger, has to be more defined.
More sound.
Yes. Thank you.
I do agree. I do agree with you.
Yes, but you will agree that Inst made a lot for Africa, and
Yes,
it was at decades now. I try to make the importance of Africa understood. So we do this. There are a lot of interesting projects. For example, normally, you know, Kilimanjaro is a mountain of snow. And this is the film from Hemingway. In reality, 1 million people are living at Kilimanjaro because it's not the mountain where the leopard is dying. It's the mountain where there's water, where there's life in this region. And the highest summit in Africa is not Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro is a lot of different summits. The highest summit in Africa is Uhuru Peak. And Uhuru Peak means in English, the peak of freedom. And there are songs, for example, from Joe and Bass and so on about this freedom peak. And there was a poster when we were there at the Kilimanjaro region, and the poster asked, why is Kilimanjaro a hit for Hollywood and not a success for Africa? And one has to think about this. Why is Kilimanjaro a success for Hollywood? Okay, I ask now Marco for his contribution. He was the one who connected me to Darwis. Without him, there wouldn't be this connection. So I have to be grateful in many perspectives, and please, your contribution.
Okay. Thank you, Herbert, for this opportunity, and thanks to all the participants. I think we must, I change a lot my approach after the question posed by Darwis, Khudori. What I have to do, this is the key point, the key question in this period, Darwis. What I have to do, that means I must to be, to have the great conscience that what we are facing are not only changes, but are transformations. The sociologists give now more and more importance to this distinction. Changement is to go in a way that is well signed, even difficult, that require you continuous adjustment and making effort to find new balance, etc. Transformation is completely other concept, because you are going in a street and you arrive to a crossroad. Where to go? Left, right, on the So transformation means to choose the way and to have a clear idea of the future we want to build. To this, we are in a period of transformations, and we have a lot of risk also in academic world. The risk of cultural regression. Pay attention. There are a lot of things that, in terms of change, that are obviously. It's obvious that globalization is a process with continuous adaptation. Now it's more fragmented, it's more multicentric, and so on. The other danger of regression is to enter in the trap, what we call the Kipling's trap, West against East. This was good in past time, but now it's completely anti-historic. It's completely anti-historic, the war. It's completely anti-historic to have an approach only economic to the transformation we have in this, we are living in this period. That's why, from one side, academic world must go out from its silos, what is defined by UNESCO, the silos, scientific silos, cultural silos, and to develop really an interdisciplinary approach. And it is not my idea, it is Gutierrez who make appeal. Please, you economists, you lawyers, talk with the philosopher, talk with the poets, talk with the literary men, to try to imagine a way out, a possible future to live. For instance, if I remain in only an economic interpretation, it's not enough. I don't understand what is the word. Okay, after the collapse of Soviet Union, all the world adopted capitalistic system. If I use an institutional approach, I see that every people adapted this capitalistic system to its own tradition, and now you have a scenario of different capitalistic models. Chinese model is a capitalistic, but driven by a specific planning, by the role of the Communist Party. Indian has his capitalistic model. In Africa, you have its capitalistic model. Okay, but it is enough, this key of interpretation, to give an answer. So the first suggestion, it's taking Gutierrez's appeal, let's make our community strong and large, but open to all discipline, open to artists, open to culture, open to economists. We must invent something. to give an answer to you. The second approach that Diana recalled, it's the relations between academia and institutions. When even this is nothing new, but require an active initiative from our side. When they approved the Agenda for Sustainable Development, they approved also a specific program that is Science Policy Interface. That means science must work strictly with political institutions. And the same, the political institution, due to the complexity of the problems we have on the table, has to work strictly with science. So, what we imagine in our mind, it was already written and approved as a specific program by all the states. We must realize it in practice, but it is already written. Echo, this is the problem I have. Nothing new. And even the emergence of the people in the international scenario, the emergence of China, of Asia, frankly speaking, is nothing new. Because if I call my Christian theology say that the history is a process in which each people has its moment, its role in the history, and you have European people, you have people, and now China will be a protagonist in the next decades. Then Africa, that is the youngest continent, and so it's already written. What is not, how to drive this transformation and how to enter in the right way. It means, in my view, what we have to do is to give to find some basic cultural and ethical point of reference. I must have clear in mind and have a consensus about what is bad, what is good, what is progress, what is regression, and so on. We must build the ethical and cultural basis for what we can define progress. When they founded the European Union, the German Chancellor Adenauer say one very important thing that is still valid. We all live under the same sky, but we all don't have the same horizon. How to build a common horizon, a shared horizon. And this brings me again to interpret what is the globalization process. Is not only economic process, an interconnection, exchange of market, of products, or service. Globalization process is based on a revolutionary scientific and technological process. And we see now with the artificial intelligence what means this. Artificial intelligence is not only substituting the workers in the companies, it's working to modify the mind of people, the mind of people. In the past time, we have a very important example. In the 90s, where you remember well, when the scientific experiment tried to build automatically the sheep pecora dolly, sheep dolly, there was a reaction, and all the community say, stop with such experiments. We have not to build replicants, animals or human beings. So there was a stop because we must defend the life, the autonomy of the people, and not to replicate it. Today, we have in the same situation in which our mind, in the so-called control society, our mind are under the danger to be changed. So this process is continuing. It's signing new stage of globalization evolution. Is not only the multicentric, is not only the continental, no, it's a universal process. So I want to clarify to myself first what is the limit, what are the value with which I have to drive this process. I must build ethical code for driving, for the good governance of this scientific and technological evolution. That's why the confrontation with different culture is important, because I have a specific idea what is good and what is not good, what is the dignity, what is the role of the family or the community or individual. May I found a point of contact and exchange with other realities. May I use different concepts, like, for instance, the concept of harmony. What is the harmony in a society? In Italy, it's an idea. In Germany, it's an idea. In the United States, it's different. In Africa, it's different. What are the subject, social subject of this evolution? For instance, is the individual or the family or the community? In Africa, it's very strong, the community. Can we exchange and clarify the basic elements for this structural transformation that we are living now? This question, this necessity brings me to activate a new relationship with the institution. Darwis, we must talk and exchange ideas, plans, analysis with the institution, public and private institution, because it is a key passage that we are living. In this sense, it is very important that the United Nations has decided a big event in next September of this year to define a pact for the future, a pact for the future. As an academic community, a scientific community, really I feel the need to be active in this occasion, to give my contribution of clear idea. It is an opportunity. We have a basis for this. When all the states approved the agenda for sustainable development, they approved a sort of transition from one model of development to another model of development. One model based on the quantity, another model based on the quality, in which the economic evolution go together with the respect of nature, with the quality of life, and so on. So, and we see in our analysis that in these last years, all the states, the main actors, are going in this direction. Why? They want to be more competitive. So they link the new type of development, sustainable development, to the need to be more competitive. The United States changed completely the approach. The state, for the first time, the state support companies to be more sustainable, to have a competitive role in the international scenario. China is doing the same. European Union is doing the same. But in this last year, we see that there is more competition for sustainable development. Is linked sustainable development and to be the possibility to be more competitive. In the same time, also cooperation is increasing. So going to sustainable development means to be more competitive, but more cooperative, because you need to link the different type of investment. But do not forget that the new model is based on the quality of life, quality of relations, man and nature. So we have to specify what we need in terms of quality of development. It is clear that you have new protagonists, new competitors, new investments, new roles in different continental areas. But what is quality for you? What is good for you? How you can organize a harmonic life with your competitive, with the nature where you live, and so on. In this sense, really, we must take this opportunity for the pact of the future, and we must go with all the support of all different disciplines in what is the basic element to reflect on. What is our idea of the future? I remember that I recall that the famous Club of Rome in 70s of the last century, about talking about the limits of the development, the limit of development, said, planning, Diana, this is good for you. Planning the future is not to project your present in the future, but to have an idea of future to include in the present situation. So let's make all efforts to try to define a possible idea of the future that allow all the discipline to contribute to clarify the basic point of reference. And it's very interesting. Let's go to read the speech of Gutierrez to the states in September 2023, when they decided the new conference, the Pact of the Future. You are the states, you are responsible to design the future. Let's use this year just to make any efforts to design possible way to the future. And it is a process ongoing. Next September, you shall have the result. In this sense, even the non-aligned countries, the Bandung community, and so can play a very important role for everybody. So let's build a shared, try to build a shared horizon. I repeat Adenauer, we live under the same sky, but don't have the same horizon. Let's try to build a common horizon. Thank you, Durga.
So now, microphone should be on. Thank you very much for this important contribution. We have to look how we can participate in this process, and I think the documentation, the public presentation of our results on 7 June could be such a possibility. And I have this context to Guterres, to Volker Turk, for example, who is an Austrian, and there is cooperation since decades, and other people. So that it's not only a question how many people will read this documentation, it's also the direct way to have this reception then. I want to say some practical things. First, I'm certified EU expert for new technologies with a contract to European Innovation Council. European Innovation Council is part of the EU Commission, and they have 20 billion euro for new technologies. And this is a little bit amount of money you can do something. But the good point is they finance only such things for which the banks, etc., don't give money. It's risk. It's risk money. It is 20 billion. And as an evaluator of this European Innovation Council, I saw how the things are going on. And the problem is you can get money for small enterprises, but you can't make a change in the society. We have suggestions for changings. For example, when Mano is talking about violence against nature, quantum technology, this is totally different. This is not digitalization. This is not 0 and 1. This is a possibility for new energy. And my suggestion was to Guterres that I said, okay, I give you this innovation and you get a new financing of United Nations. Then this would be an independent institution, and we will see how this will work because there are a lot of different interests in the birth of very powerful institutions. When you look at the petrol enterprises and so on, they will not be happy about this invention of new energy, of a quantum technology. But this could be the background for Africa, for Asia, and so on to come into a new situation. The second thought, this is anti-pluralism. When you take Austria, they take science as another form of ideology, and they organize who is teacher, who is researcher at these institutions. And they say, we want this and that result. And this is in language, in history, and so on, against the interests of the Austrian society. And it's in the same way in the European Union. The result is a destruction within societies. So to get pluralism is a first step that you can do research in a new way. This is one main idea also of this World Conference, to come to pluralism. We have today the recording, but I know from the statistics, you have not too many people who will look at this recording. Reality is, we had, for example, 60.5 million researches a month for the articles. 16.5 million researchers. This is a lot more than newspapers have in Austria. And this is for the scientific background. So when you want to use the chance, I invite you to deliver articles to Trends. This will be one of the main documentations. And we will have video podcasts also. For example, today, Beatrice is not here, and Lisa Quazie is not here. They wanted to make with me video podcasts. We will do this, but I say also very important are the articles, because in an article you can formulate better, and it's more read than other things. Then we will have the distribution of our thoughts. The one thing I said, direct contact to Guterres, and I know how to do the things that he really will read it, because just to write an email, this is not enough. On the other hand, we will present this via news agencies, and there are 200 million users. 200 million users is also not too much when you look at the billions of people who are around the world. But sometimes it's important who read this and who are those who have the possibility of multiplication. And this is what we will try with the documentation after 7th June. And I think these were great contributions today. We will put the recording on Inst channel. We have an own Inst channel at YouTube. We have also a channel for Eurocipher Society. And we will use the different levels to make this reality what Marco said. We should say, Guterres, this is a very good speech, September 2023. And we have suggestions for you for future, for the future of the United Nations. And this means a future for the people in this world. So very good what Marco said. I support this, and I will do my best that we will get influence. Please, Simo.
Just two remarks. What Marco has said is very rational. It is indeed way things can work. That means confronting positions, working out compromises, and developing an horizon, and a horizon which to which all adhere, to which we all carry. That's what he said. And indeed, one could expect the world to function that way, but it's we shouldn't forget that it doesn't. It's the world doesn't function. Even the United Nations on a so rational and very harmonious basis. It's most of the time a question of it's a power relation. That is what is decided at the end is never just what has been worked out by all together and with let's say a way of finding out what is the position all people accept. Most of the time, it's a question. It's a power relation. That's the way we see the world functioning. What the colleagues said from Bandung and from India at the beginning is that, of course, it will be wishful that we can attain such a rational functioning of the world, which is also not only rational, because rationality, you can surely formulate it and say it is above any democratic approach, since rationality is something which is considered to be imposed at the level of thinking and so on, and everybody should see that he has to adhere to it. But this is not the way we feel that the world is functioning. Most of the time, we have the impression that what is considered to be the common future is imposed, and by forces which can be identified very clearly. And the United Nations is not a place where you just have rational discussion and democratic decisions. It's a place where power relations take place, and where people come out very frustrated and have to follow decisions they don't necessarily accept.
Darwis, please.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just wonder that if we have time to discuss, but I would like to thank you very much to Marco's intervention. It is nice to hear English speaking with the Italian melody. And it is slowly, it is nice. There are so many things to discuss in the points proposed by Marco, and I don't want to comment all. I just want to focus on one word that you mentioned my name, that we have to work to link academy and institutions. That's the point I want to say. But first, before I would like to comment also to Simo's intervention. I agree with you, and I saw the debate between Marco and Simo as the debate between idealism and realism. While Marco is more in idealistic or innocent things, and Simo to be realistic, the power relations, etc., etc. But we will have, we need another time to debate. Now I come back to the question of academia and institution. I agree with Marco and also Diana and also Fatima that we need to give input to the policy makers. That's what we always do in Bandung Spirit Communities Network in our conferences. Every time we organize a big conference, we end with declaration or statement of our standpoint, our position. And this we submit to the authority. And we ask the request, the authority. For example, in Indonesia, when we organize every time, we submit our final declaration to the Indonesian government, to the president of the republic. And we request the president to also transmit our message, our declaration to other heads of states. And it is hierarchically, maybe Indonesia and then ASEAN, because Indonesia belong to ASEAN, and Indonesia belong to non-aligned movement. Indonesia belong to Islamic Conference Cooperation. So we ask to spread our proposal to these different actors or stakeholders of the world. That's why I just want to underline what Marco suggests. Now, second point I would like to comment is on Africa. That is, I refer to Diana, I refer to Simo, of course, that is very important, Africa. And that's, I said that not to let anyone left behind. Without the peace or without African development, there will be no peace in the world. So that's my conviction. And Africa is very important now. It's the last continent to be conquered by the whole world. And it is since Bandung, it was already declared by the Western government, by French especially, because I wrote a book of the France and Bandung based on the diplomatic archive of French. That Africa is the last, because Asia has escaped from Western control. Now the last after Asia is Africa. Africa is the last continent to be conquered. And now you see all the economic powers in the world, they come to Africa because Africa will be natural resources and market in the future. You see all the summits of Africa with other powerful economies, China, Africa, India, Africa, Japan, Africa, Korea, Africa, US, Africa, Europe, Africa, Russia, Africa, etc., etc. What is the benefit for Africa? Now, 80% of population at the end, toward the end of the century, will be in Africa and Asia. So you see, Europe, the Western world, 20% of the whole world. And realistically, now Asia is the first partner, trading partner of Africa. Go beyond US and Europe. Asia is now the first partner of Africa. That's why also, in order to go beyond NATO, as I said, to go beyond no action talking only, we founded this African, Asian, and International Studies Institute in order to work with Africa. And the third point, my project in the future is to found, it is also a preparation for my retirement from a university. It is a project what I call to found an association of borderless scholars, universitaires sans frontières, that we can mobilize colleagues, volunteers to work, to share, not to teach, not to give teaching, not to give lessons to Africa or to other parts of the world, but to share their knowledge, their experience, their thought, their reflection with local people. For example, teaching or sharing in Africa for 1 week, and then maybe in another continent, moving in all over the world. This is what I call the borderless scholars, or universitaires sans frontières. But it is not limited only scholars, but also teachers, because there are teachers who are not scholars. Because I talk with many people, and my colleague teachers, they are not scholars, they are not researchers. They want to participate, but they said, but I am not scholars. I am just simple teaching. Yes, it is possible. So it is not just scholars, but this is maybe teachers, lecturers, sans frontières, or borderless. So that is my next project after, or besides the Bandung spirit-based movement. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. The problem is we have now 13, 14, and 45 minutes. The next sessions will start, and it will be until 6 o'clock, 4 hours. So it will be very important that there is some refreshment. My point is, when you look at Africa, there was the time of Samuel Huntington, no history of Africa. Then UN made the general history of Africa. There was a totally change. Before that, you had not one professor for history of Africa in USA. After that, we had 2,000 teachers at the university. And this was a real change. And when you look now at Africa, there are new possibilities, and they come from Africa, not only from the powers from abroad. So I thank you all very much. We have the possibility with trans articles, even with our video podcasts and so on, to go on with that what was said today. And I hope I see you at 2 o'clock once more at Zoom, but the problem for some of you will be this will be a session in German. Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much what you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Herbert. Compliments. Compliment. Thank you, Diana, Darwis, and
Thank
other
you,
colleagues.
Marco,
Thank you,
Herbert,
Marco,
Diana, Simo,
Simo, yes, and Herbert. Thank you very
Fatima.
much.
I didn't hear
Bye-bye.
the Dr. Rania El-Wardi from Egypt, etc. Thank you very much.
Okay. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao,
Bye.
bye-bye.
I'm finished
Bye-bye.
now.
Bye-bye.